Welcome to Season 3, Episode 5 of Liberty Inc., the Libertarian Party of North Carolina podcast. I am Ryan Brown, Chair of the Libertarian Party of North Carolina, and on today's episode we have a legislative update from myself and Dee Watson. As this week's guest, we have Dr. Dan, host of the Freedom Forum Radio, and William Dub Wells and Travis Groo Talk Sports. As always, you can find us at lpnc.org. And if you have any questions, you can email communications@lpnc.org. Before we get to the rest of the show, though, I would like to let you know that filing for the 2023 elections is coming up soon. Filing for the elections will be in July, from July 7th until July 21st. There are 1,105 elections this year, and they will all be local elections. Local elections are where libertarians can really shine. Local elections are where we have the best chance of winning and the greatest possible chance of creating liberty and protecting liberty in most people's lives. If you are a potential candidate or want to run, please email us at politics@lpnc.org. We'll be happy to help you during your run in whatever way we can. If you have any questions or want to learn more about what it means to be a candidate, please reach out. We are happy to help you with what we can, and we have resources that you can use as a candidate. One legal requirement is that you have to have a treasurer on your campaign. This requires training from the state, but the good news is that we might have candidates, or we might have treasurers that can help you as a candidate, depending on the race you're running. So if you're interested and that is holding you back, please let us know. And as always, we'd be happy to help you in any way possible. First, on today's show, we'll go to the legislative update where Dee and I talk about what happened in the legislature this week. Thank you. Today, we're going to be talking about 3 bills that were heard in committee this week and about 3 bills that were recently vetoed. The first bill that we heard in committee this week, the House Education Committee, K through 12, chaired by Tricia Cotham. The first bill was Senate 411, various educational changes. Dee, would you like to give us some details on this bill?
Sure. The original bill that came up from the Senate gave homeschoolers the ability to take AP and PSAT tests at their at a local public school by just paying a fee. This is a big win for homeschoolers because it gives parents the opportunity to really put their students on par with fair testing against public school students and private school students. When it moved to the House, the PCS added 3 provisions. One was that the public schools would have a medical condition action plan and a medical emergency plan. The other provision was that licensed nurses would no longer need an additional certification to be public school nurses, which is a regulatory reform that is welcomed, I think, by most, if not all, libertarians. The third thing was parental choice for students with an individual education learning plan that require nursing services. So these were added onto the bill. However, it seemed that bipartisan support, it passed committee without objection. Doesn't seem like there's any issues with the bill.
Excellent. And with that proposed committee substitute, the PCS passing, it was sent back to the Senate, where it was sent through a subcommittee there and passed out of that subcommittee. So it is now going to the Senate Rules Committee, and I expect it will go out of there and be presented to the governor soon. The second bill, House 686, there was another proposed committee substitute, PCS. Dee, would you like to explain that bill?
Yeah, so apparently the public school system wasn't covering the civil rights movement adequately. So they're now requiring that a unit be taught in middle school social studies and civics literacy high school class. The biggest surprise was that this wasn't already required. I think most schools were already teaching it. I know my kids' schools were. It had overwhelming bipartisan support. it had was sponsored by people, the House members from both houses, from both Democrats and Republicans. It passed without objection. The libertarian issue with this bill is that they actually allocated additional funds and additional appropriations for it. So again, government, you think they're, have enough money, but just allocating more money for something you would assume was already being done that, isn't that difficult.
Absolutely. I personally, I wonder if it's because of the crossover deadlines and everything that in order to get it past this session, it has to have some sort of appropriations on there. But anyways, after the committee meeting or during the committee meeting, it was referred to the House Committee on Appropriations. So we'll see just how much money they get for that specific bill. But again, the libertarian position is that schools should be choosing curriculum and schools should not be funded by the government. Anyway, so the third and the most controversial of the bills that were heard in committee this week was Senate Bill 49, and that was another PCS, and they are calling that one the Parents' Bill of Rights. So would you like to explain that one, Dee?
Yeah, this one was presented by Senator Amy Gailey, but she was presenting it to a House committee for them to move through the House. She was one of the sponsors of the bill. She's worked very hard on it, and it's basically taking sections. It's primarily taking sections and putting it all in one legislative place for things that had been scattered, to make it clear to parents what their rights are as parents when they're putting their students in a public educational system. It was incredibly controversial. Democratic Representative Morey pointed out that it's putting a burden on public schools that is not placed on private schools, even though many private schools are currently receiving public dollars. That is definitely the tack that Democrats are going to start taking for everything when it comes to these bills. House Representative von Hafen was concerned that the parental notification requirement would cause parents to know when the school's still kind of feeling out an issue and would cause the parents to interfere with the school figuring out what's going on with a child. So Democrats are clearly going to be opposed to this bill. I actually expect this one to also eventually get a veto from the governor. But I still expect it to be overridden. The Gailey also made it clear that this does not change General Statute 90, Section 21.5. There's provisions in this bill that have to do with medical requirements. That statute says that a minor's consent is sufficient for a medical practitioner treating venereal disease, pregnancy, use of drugs or alcohol, and emotional disturbances. However, with that current with the current statutes, additional consent is still needed for abortion or sterilization. It's very clear in that bill. It doesn't change that bill, but again, Von Hafen pointed out that with this, because of the notification requirement, is the schools asking questions, they're concerned that it would get in the way of treating those things.
Absolutely. And one of the things you mentioned, this is likely to go across party lines and be vetoed. But there were recently 3 bills that were passed that had broad bipartisan support, which ended up being vetoed. And they had their veto overridden, but the story in that is that there were significant Democrat numbers who changed their votes from when they were first voted on to when the veto vote came. So Senate Bill 331, the Consumer Finance Act Amendments, Senate Bill 329, Retail Installment Sales Act Amendments, and Senate Bill 299, Reimburse Late Audit Costs with Sales Tax Revenue. These were all bills that were passed with significant bipartisan support. And then once the bill was vetoed, that bipartisan support eroded quite a bit. So the first bill, Senate Bill 331, passed initially 46-0. Senate Bill 329 passed 34-9, and Senate Bill 299 passed 43-0. Once they were vetoed, the vote on the overriding the veto was 30-16, 31-16, and then 31-16 again. So there were some absences, both excused and unexcused, but what this shows is as there are at least a dozen Democrats who, for one reason or another, voted initially for the bill, and then after the veto, voted to support Governor Cooper. So a couple of these people in specifically were Woodard, who did not vote on all three of the, or who did not flip on all three of the votes. He maintained his vote in favor of the bill. And Adcock, who did not vote on all three of the bills, though she was there doing business during the rest of the time that day. So in my mind, you heard when Trish Cotham switched parties that there was a sort of vote this way always or else sort of mantra among the Democrats. Now, whether or not that's true, who knows? But it seems like Governor Cooper could be trying to keep Democrats in line by saying who can I really count on, and maybe it's a threat of a primary, or maybe it's a threat of money somewhere else. I don't really know. But Dee, what comments do you have on that?
Just as somebody who, even on our level, we've worked politically, this is a huge misstep somewhere. It makes these senators look terrible, okay? Because in a unanimous, two of these bills were unanimous support, okay? And everybody but Woodard and Adcock flipped. So all those flips look awful. It makes it look like they are just like following whipping orders. And they just vote like, 1 month one way and the next month the other way because the governor said so. And it just looks awful. And it's not shocking to me that they're doing that. What's shocking to me is that the governor had them look so terrible because all he had to do, we're in politics and we've had to do things like this before. And if he had just told them before the first vote where he was going and where he was leaning, then this misstep would have been avoided. So it just made the senators look terrible. It makes them look like they're unthinking people who just do whatever the governor says, with the two exceptions of Adcock and Woodard.
I think you said that the majority and the Senate Democrat majority or minority leader and the whip both voted in favor of the bill initially and then voted against it, or voted not to or override the veto. So yeah, it's not particularly shocking that they're just doing what the governor says, but it is kind of shocking that they look so disorganized doing it. But any final thoughts on this, Dee?
No, but I do think it speaks to the general disorganization of the Democratic Party in North Carolina. I was just shocked by it. It's not
Absolutely.
hard to coordinate that.
Yeah. And that is why you should always know the outcome of the vote before you take the vote. So thank you for joining us for this legislative update on episode 4 of season 3 of the LPNC podcast. Thank you.
The American Revolution was a watershed for libertarianism. In the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson enunciated many of the libertarian ideas, including the belief in unalienable natural law rights to life, liberty, and, well, it should have been life, liberty, and property, but life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the belief in the right and the duty of citizens to throw off such government that violates these rights. Our Declaration of Independence our Constitution and our Bill of Rights brought to realization the major themes of 18th century libertarianism with limits on executive and legislative powers. Such values have remained at the core of American political thought ever since. The Declaration of Independence, of course, enunciates the principles on which our nation was founded. I look at the Constitution as kind of the shop manual for how the government is supposed to work. But most important part of the Bill of Rights, because that illuminates and writes down for everyone to see the natural law rights that the government is supposed to protect and secure, the natural law rights of every single individual. So I want to read this paragraph from the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So there they talk about those natural law rights. Natural law rights are ours from the moment of conception. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to those ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. What they're talking about there is the right to be governed by a government that is based on principles that are equally applied to all. Now, achieving and maintaining the consent of the governed is where most governments eventually fail. And here's the important thing. Consent of the governed does not mean that each of us agree with every single decision made by government. We consent to be governed as long as the government follows the rule of law and preserves those unalienable natural law rights of each citizen. Individual sovereignty is the essence of personal freedom. So we consent to be governed by the government in place as long as it follows the rules and doesn't infringe on or eliminate the natural law rights of each individual. That is where governments invariably run into trouble. Control freaks just insist on that desire to tell others how to live their lives. Today, these constitutional protections are being ridiculed, ignored, abused, altered, and eradicated by the elected and appointed government officials whose primary ambition is self-enrichment and a lust for power. They have pursued a divisive agenda of group identity politics to set us against each other instead of fostering the wishes of patriots for unity of purpose and unity of policies that truly promote the general welfare, not the specific welfare of a group or a set of individuals. In times of strife and conflict, when the established government is out of control and unresponsive to the rights of its people, rational citizens seek to replace the corrupt government with one that will obey the rule of law. The Libertarian Party has viewed and does view the dominant Republican and Democratic parties as having diverged from what the libertarians view as libertarian principles, the libertarian principles of our American founders. Libertarian principles have been part of the human experience for centuries, but as a formal party, only since 1971. My concern, and that's what we need to discuss, My concern is why the Libertarian Party has never reached the voter acceptance that it should. After all, the libertarian principles that we've enunciated and talked about are the very same as those of our founders, and they are enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. So that's what we need to talk about. Why the Libertarian Party has never reached the voter acceptance that it rightfully should.
And on that note, everyone, what's up? I am happy to introduce you to my guest tonight on Liberty Inc., the one and only Dr. Dan Eichenbaum, Freedom Forum Radio. Amazing introduction. Thank you for being here. You got right to the heart of what I want to talk about. When I reached out to you, what are we missing in terms of messaging? What kind of outreach should we be doing? How do we grow the party? But before we get into that, I think just by your statement, people understand that you know the stakes. But can you give a little background on yourself so we can find out how you got there?
Well, first of all, Rob, I want to thank you very much for having me as a guest. I mean, it's very enjoyable to be able to speak with people truly like-minded, but like-minded on a level of principle. I mean, that's what the Libertarian Party is. It's the party of principle. There's no question about it. I mean, the Libertarians base the party philosophy on principles that have been around for centuries and that are cherished by anyone with a brain who understands what freedom is. I mean, let's face it, we all want to be free. Burning in my heart is the reason I want to be free. I don't want people telling me what to do. And that's why the Libertarian Party is so important to me. You know, I was a member of the Libertarian Party for a number of years. I worked very hard on ballot access, not only in North Carolina, but in Alaska, and some other states. And the funny thing happened on the way to the forum, as the saying goes. Back in 2009, my wife and my daughter and I went down to Atlanta, Georgia, because we heard there was going to be some kind of a rally at the Capitol about taxes on April 15th, tax day. We expect to go down there and be, 300-400 people waving some signs and having a good time. Turned out there were 20,000 people there surrounding the Capitol.
Wow.
And Sean Hannity was speaking there, and other people were speaking there. And so that was a major thing. We said to ourselves, my God, we got to go back home and start this up. And my wife and I were among the half a dozen founders of the Tea Party group in our county. And that was an amazing experience in 2009. Well, obviously, I must have opened my mouth a lot because I caught the attention of a group of people in Asheville who were the Ron Paul supporters in Asheville. And they came to me and they said,
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much. So they said to me, look, if you want to run for Congress, we will support you as long as you become a Republican, because that's what you have to do to win. And I thought about it because I'd been a libertarian for quite a while, and I believed in libertarianism because that's the way I personally live in relation to other people. And I was very new to that, to the whole thought of running for office. And so we sat and we talked, and they were basically the Ron Paul supporters in Asheville and the young Republicans in Asheville. And I said, okay, I will do this. And so I re-registered as a Republican and announced that I was running for Congress in the 11th district. And then started a series of traveling around, talking, debates and things like that. And a funny thing happened. I found that I actually knew more than I thought I knew, having been a libertarian, and I will say that. And so in that run-up period before filing, I won the straw poll in every single debate, more votes than the total votes of the other 4 people that I was debating against. And guess who got really anxious? The GOP.
But because you have principles.
Exactly. And because I was enunciating the principles of limited government, free market economy, individual freedom, personal responsibility, and a constitutionally based government.
Things they like to say.
Yeah, and that's what I debated on. And I had some mentors back then. One of them was Bob Levy, the former chairman of the Cato Institute, who lives in our general area, and I became good friends and close friends with him, and I have been to this day. He's been on Freedom Forum Radio many times discussing constitutional issues. And then what happened is the GOP, especially one county chairman, started blasting emails to every single Republican that I was really a libertarian and not a Republican, and really giving me a hard time. And then, so they dragged a.
Can I interrupt for a second there?
Sure,
That's
absolutely.
insane. That validates exactly why they're concerned. Like that's the antithesis of principle. Oh no, like somebody might cause us to have to commit to something. I don't even know what they're, but wow.
Yeah. So what happened is 2 weeks before the filing deadline, they got a party hack from Hendersonville to file. They funded him, and they campaigned for him, which is against the rules of the Republican Party for a party chairman to do that. And when it came to the primary election, I got 35% of the vote in a 6-man primary. But their candidate beat me in only one county, and that was Henderson County, and he beat me by 4,000 votes. And that was enough to give him 40.1%. So there was no runoff, and he went on to get creamed in the general election. So I learned a lot from that experience. And in 2014, I ran for county commission in Cherokee County, was elected. I won the primary against 3 or 4 other candidates, got well over the 50%, and then won the election as well. And I was reelected again in 2018 and in 2022 again. So I've been a county commissioner now for 8 years, and I have another 3.5 years before I decide what I'm going to do there. But in addition to that, of course, I mean, I'm actively practicing ophthalmologist. I've been practicing here in Murphy, North Carolina since 1986. I have an enormous practice, very well trained. Yale Medical School, Bascom Palmer Eye Institute. I was in the service, U.S. Navy and Public Health Service deployment. After I finished my residency, so I was an ophthalmologist when I went in. Served my 2 years that was required at that time, and I've been practicing and practiced in Florida briefly, in New York briefly, and then came here to North Carolina, which is the home. I love this place. I love where I am.
I'm with you.
And so pretty much that's my story. I have many interests. I'm, married and children. I'm proud to say I have a daughter who's married, has given us a wonderful grandson.
Congratulations.
Our son is a commissioned officer in the Marine Corps.
And tell him thank you, please. Which
is wonderful. And so here I am. When I was running, I started Freedom Forum, Dr. Dan's Freedom Forum in Asheville. I used to do a TV show, a 1-hour talk show every Tuesday night.
So if you're listening, I was unaware of that, but I promise you I'm going to try and get some clips to embarrass him after the show.
Yeah, some of those clips were pretty embarrassing, but nevertheless, when that sort of went away, and the radio station here was taken over by a gentleman who wanted to do conservative talk radio, and I was the second person to sign up for programs, and so I've been on WJRB FM 95.1 for the last I'd say 11 years.
Wow.
Prime spots on Saturday morning, 8 a.m. and 9:30 a.m., Sunday afternoon, 2:30 p.m. and 7 p.m. And my website now, which is, I've turned it over to be run by a professional media firm. We have over 100,000 followers and
We'll put the
fans.
website link in the description as well as the radio.
Pardon?
I'll drop the links to the radio show and the website in the description.
So that's basically what I've been doing, is doing interviews. I've interviewed some incredible people, but the theme is all the same. The theme is natural law rights and the Constitution, and how the government has vastly and dangerously, and I don't know, and I don't have enough bad adverbs, but disgustingly overreached its power. They've stolen our rights, they steal our property, they steal our freedom, they steal our money, and they're completely out of the constitutional realm. And that's why it is such a great experience and an honor for me to be talking to libertarians, because I know libertarians understand what I'm talking about. They understand the Constitution and what it means to follow the Constitution, and what it means when the government doesn't.
So a lot to unpack there, and a couple of points that I want to follow up on, but just one real quick follow-up point. Along with all that, you have a pretty significant reach. Like this isn't some kid in their basement. And I know you gave the history of it, but you influence people.
Well, I hope to. And that's my point, is I need to reach as many people as possible to spread the good word, the good news, the principles that we should be living by. And that's really what it comes down to. And it's what I alluded to. The Libertarian Party should be the party of choice for everyone who craves freedom, who understands in their heart how do you be free?
There are only two types of people that I don't think are naturally libertarians, and they are politicians and the lobbyists who pay politicians.
Well, that's exactly the point. And it's, you remember Eisenhower, when he retired, he made that famous comment about watch out for the military-industrial complex. Right now, if he were alive, he would make that same speech, but he would call it the corporate political complex, because that is what that's who's screwing us right now. You have multi-million-dollar corporations and their owners and their wealthy global elite who have billions and billions of dollars to invest. And what do they invest in doing? Rob, I don't have to tell you, they invest in buying politicians. And when you buy politicians, what do you get? You get access. You get access to the wheels of government. And that's why we're all getting screwed.
So when you were initially introducing yourself, you were saying how you have all the negative adjectives for government. And I actually, not that I disagree with any of them, but I think the most important adjective there is inevitable and predictable. Like we have a system that we have allowed to set itself up to become this. And so you said something else interesting. You said, I don't like being told what to do. And I feel that very deeply. But I think that, and particularly in terms of discussing messaging today, that's a misunderstood statement. So like, if I'm training for jujitsu, I very much like being told what to do by someone who knows more than I do. What I don't like is some elected, I don't care if he's an idiot or she's a genius, just I didn't choose you. You're not my doctor. You're not my spouse. You're not my boss. I'm not agreeing to be told what to do. And that's a big difference. And then the force of the state comes down behind it. And so this is a long-winded way of saying there are people, there's a perception of libertarianism as a sort of lazy or irresponsible philosophy. You just don't want to be told what to do. So how do you counter that narrative in the way you go out?
Well, a number of years ago, the school system. We tried to get into the school system to talk to civics classes about principles. And I went in, and of course they monitored to make sure I didn't say anything political, but whatever. So I went in and I started each discussion, and these were high school students. I said, who wants to explain to me what it means to be free? And that's what I asked them. I said, explain to me, what does it mean to you to be free? And most of them kind of understood it meant that they could make decisions for themselves, and that they were kind of, and I got them to agree that, yes, you can make decisions for yourself, but who's responsible? And they said, well, if I make a bad decision, I think I'm going to have to fix it. And that's really, if you can get people to understand that in the high school, I think
You
that's
said
pretty.
6-year-olds?
Pardon?
You said 6-year-olds?
No, high school.
Oh, high school. So the most irresponsible, arguably, set of people on the planet understood that with freedom comes responsibility, because you are, in fact, accountable to yourself.
Well, when you look at what's going on today, the government has eliminated personal responsibility. And that's one of the reasons we're in trouble, because you can do virtually anything you want and you can get into trouble. And the government is there to throw you a lifeline, bail you out.
You know how nefarious it's gotten? Not only are they bailing you out, they're telling you it's someone else's fault.
Right.
And without their help, you can't go after that person for your whatever. I mean, it's getting real bad.
Well, the roots of this go back a number of decades. I mean, you have to look at this. The American progressive movement is about 100 years old. They've been working very hard below the surface initially, and now they're not only out in the open, they control the government. But I remember back in the 60s, Cloward and Piven were very well thought of sociologists. And what they attempted to do was to blame all the ills of society, all the bad actions of individuals on society. In other words, their whole point was, if you screw up, it's not your fault, it's society's fault. And therefore, society has to fix it. And of course, by society, what they mean is government.
So you raise a lot of good and interesting points there. I want to go back to something you had said a minute ago, though, that I was just sort of thinking about. So what does it mean to be free? And certainly there's an accountability. There's also, when you really get down to the core of freedom, in quotes, capital F, whatever it may be, as a feeling and as a word, the apparatus, the state apparatus, the media apparatus, misinformation, whatever you want to call it, has done a very good job of creating a sort of anxiety or fear and attaching it to that word. So it's not just, here, we're coming to help you in your situation. It's, be afraid of what could happen if we don't. And what I was interested in terms of messaging, and particularly outreach. So you said the progressives have captured the government. I would actually posit that the progressives have and the authoritarians is what I would say, have captured the narrative. And to me, that's way more important, because it's not people being bulldozed over by a tyrants in government. It's people voting them in and cheering them on.
Well, you raised a very, very good point there. And it's not, and first of all, I don't call them progressives. I call them collectivists, because that's what they really are. And so that's the word that I prefer. They refer to themselves as the American progressive movement. I don't want to call them socialists. I don't want to call them communists. I call them collectivists.
I actually like authoritarians.
Authoritarians.
They're
yes.
not even real collectivists in the sense that, like, a sports team is a collective, but it's voluntary. They want to tell other people what to do. Like, they have no idea what they're even asked for. I appreciate you saying that, though. Specificity is important.
I agree, and that's really the point here. So the collectivists or the authoritarians, yes, have taken over the reins of government at this point. And I look at, they were the insurgents for 100 years, but they were really the insurgents actively since about the time of Eisenhower and Kennedy and through Johnson. That's when you really started to see that the insurgency of the authoritarians, and I'll use your word, Rob, because I think it is an excellent word. That's when you said they were the insurgents, and they were playing the dirty tricks and trying to take over. They were the Viet Cong, basically. Now, unfortunately, like what happened in Vietnam, the Viet Cong took over the government, and the authoritarians have taken over our government now. And they are supported by billions and billions of corporate and individual dollars and you just have to look like a very simple fact. Susan Collins of Maine, senator from Maine, spent $90 million to win an election for a job that pays $175,000 a year.
Isn't that mind-blowing?
There's a deficit of $89 million. So that $89 million buys access.
It buys a lot more than 89 million.
Yes, that's right. A multiple.
The recent North Carolina, Ted Budd and Sherry Beasley, I think 480 million. It was the most expensive Senate race ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you said. I mean, what does the senator make? 170,000. It's
right.
For people to spend that much money, it has to be worth it, and that should be terrifying. And it's not Republicans, it's not Democrats, it's both.
Go ahead and say it. It is the uniparty.
Yes. Yes.
I like that's what Mike Ross says.
Hashtag
I love Mike Ross. You know, and I'm going to say that my interview with him, I just enjoyed that. He is such a great candidate, and he really truly gets it. He's sincere, and his website, Fire the Uniparty, is right on the mark as far as I'm concerned, because that's what we need to do. They are a uniparty. No matter what words come out of their mouths, they all do the same thing. They're all beholden to the same revenue stream, or whatever you want to call it.
George Carlin, and I won't use his exact words because it's a family show, but what was he said? Bipartisan is just a fancy word for the government's about to screw you extra hard.
Yeah, exactly right. And I love George Carlin.
So you mentioned Mike. What's been nice about working with Mike and a lot of the other people that are coming up and starting to put in time now is that the party's principled, and the principles are inviolable. There is some range of disagreement that's principle based that we can certainly contemplate and have the discussion and maybe teach the rest of the country how to have a civil disagreement. But I think more importantly, it's a party that's focused on the goal of spreading liberty. So we're not caught up in this obsession with winning elections, because then if winning elections is the only thing, then you do what it takes to win elections and you lose your principles. But we also recognize that if we want to get liberty back, we need to win elections. And so it's, what steps do we take to grow the party? How do we grow outreach? And this is the question I have been waiting to ask you. What are we doing wrong? What can we do better? Where are there opportunities?
You know, I mean, I hear you, Rob, and it's, in many ways, it's painful to me. It really is, because I would love to run for office as a libertarian. I really would. And at the local level, you know, it might be interesting when I come up for re-election in maybe 2026, if I switch to the Libertarian Party to see if I could win. But the point is, my principles didn't change, and one of my campaign mottos was, "I will keep the government off your land and out of your lives." That's one of the things I ran on here in Cherokee County.
Pretty simple.
Pardon?
It seems pretty simple.
Yeah, it is, and that resonates here very much. It probably resonates in most areas that except the cities, because that's another story. But you ask a very important question. what do we have to do to influence people? How do we get to influence people? A decade ago, I thought that the average attention span that I could deal with was 10 minutes. That's what I thought. And so I made an outstanding Second Amendment video, okay? It was called the Second Amendment, Guarantor of Individual Freedom. And it was exactly 10 minutes long. And it's an excellent video about the Second Amendment and why it is the guarantor of individual freedom. The problem is, 10 minutes was kind of pushing it back then, and now 10 minutes, forget about it. If you don't grab someone in 30 to 60 seconds, they're on to something else. This is an instant gratification society, and you have to trim your message down so that the message lasts 30 to 60 seconds. That is number one. So whatever
because I think we have a good example of that right here. So you have another video that addresses something that can be controversial in terms of gun laws and red flag laws, and you made a minute, 10-second video, I think, talking about how nefarious red flag laws can be. So let's take a quick look.
This is Dr. Dan. The Bill of Rights requires a search warrant that defines the place to be searched and what can be taken before the government can seize your life, liberty, or property. That is called due process. Red flag laws are flagrantly unconstitutional. They allow the government to confiscate your firearms based on an anonymous accusation that you don't have the opportunity to challenge in front of a judge. Dictators rely on that kind of tattletale evidence to eliminate individual freedom. When our government and judicial system unilaterally suspend due process to achieve a political agenda, we are no better than the dictatorships, past and present, whose violations of human rights we now condemn. The ends do not justify the means. Resist tyranny. Learn the truth. Break away from the herd. Think for yourself.
And so tell me what goes into the consideration when you're making a video like that.
Well, what you have to do is you have to write a script. And that's pretty much what you do. You say, all right, I'm going to red flag laws. And that's what I did. What is important that people need to know about red flag laws? And then you write it down and you trim it and trim it and trim it. Because 60 seconds is about 120, maybe 130 words. That's it. So you have to say everything you need to say in 120 words. That means every single thought counts. Every single word counts. Every phrase counts. And so that's a very tough thing for creative writing. I mean, I've been writing all the articles, virtually all the articles on my website, I've written myself. Now, they're a 3 to 4 minute read, sometimes 5-minute read. Well, the people we need to reach, most of them are not going to read that. That's a long article.
Absolutely. So point number one, it sounds like make things palatable, make them bite size, and make every point hit. More for Cocoa Puffs and less Finnegan's Wake.
Yeah, and so that's number one. Number two, you have to make it visually appealing. Okay, whatever you do, you have to make it visually appealing. So I've got in my 60-second videos, and I've made a bunch of them. Some of them, the first ones were called a constitutional minute, and they dealt more with constitutional ideas or explaining certain phrases or sections of the Constitution. But then I realized I had to do more than that. I had to talk about issues in relation to the people. And one of the things about my website is that my credo is to explain the importance of what we talk about to individual people. How is this going to affect you? And so you have to incorporate that. So then the next series I did it's a whole series called Freedom and Sacrifice. And some of them are with me talking, and some of them visually talking. Some of those videos are involved with animation type things.
Well, so that's, I'm really glad that you made that. And I had no idea, but that's number two. We actually, on the panel, Noah Zenger, our graphic artist for the LPNC, is joining, and we've got some of his libertarian comics. I'd love to hear your reaction when we pull those up a little later.
So we did some of those. I did some of those on climate change. And actually, I did one on climate. I did 3 on climate change that were done using PowerPoint to make individual sequences and putting them over an audio track. And the second one was We Are Not a Democracy. And I did that the same way.
You want to pause and we can take a quick look at that one?
Sure.
Here it goes.
The United States is not a democracy. You should have learned this in civics class. Democracy is mob rule, where 51% of the people control everything. The majority, even by 1 vote, makes all the rules for everyone. Freedom of choice and individual freedom are gone. The United States is a constitutional republic in which the natural law rights of the minority, even a minority of 1 single person, are protected by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights no matter what the majority wants. So stop using the phrase, our democracy. Only a constitutional republic guarantees individual freedom. Learn the truth, break away from the herd, think for yourself.
And so, you know, I think most libertarians do know we're a constitutional republic, a representative democracy maybe, but your message, the bigger point is your message carries. There was, I think, 1 minute and 15 seconds, and it's all there. You say everything, every word hits. There's a visual aspect to it. You can watch it, you can listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's really important. And why I wrote that is that I used to listen to, I don't listen to the news anymore, but you listen to the news and they'd be all talking about our democracy. And every time any one of them said it, I looked at them and I said, hey, when next time you hear someone say our democracy, this is what I want you to do. Time out. The United States is not a democracy. A democracy is mob rule where 51% of the people tell 49% what to do. We're a constitutional republic in which the rights of the individual are protected no matter what the majority wants. So stop using the phrase our democracy. You know, they should say that. You should have said that. But I couldn't get anyone to listen to it at that point.
I listened. I love it. I'm with you. I've said it before. Maybe not as well, but.
But anyway, the other thing, and it's very difficult to get them to listen to logic. And so when you are going to give me, that's one of the things that you have to be able to talk to people in a logical way. Say, yes, 2 + 2 = 4. It doesn't equal 4.1 or 3.9. 2 + 2 = 4. It's a fact. And I can prove it's a fact. So you have to be able to have a short message that is logical. And the other thing, they don't have a knowledge of history and the application of history to current events. And that is why one of the big failures in our educational system now is when you take
Disney or something.
history out of it. You take history out of education, then you have removed the foundation on which people can make rational and logical decisions like, oh, that happened 70 years ago. They tried that and it was a miserable failure. And here we are trying it again. How can we expect a better result?
So you got 4 things there. You have digestible, bite-sized, but hard-hitting, make every second, every instant count. You have visually appealing as possible, or as applicable, I suppose. You have logically supported like actual real facts, principles, things that are rational and make sense, and understand the history behind them, and I suppose be prepared to provide that history to support what you're saying. There's one other thing I think I would add, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. I would add, consider the audience. So you mentioned cities, and it's not all cities, to be fair, but in general, yeah. But if we could get a message into the cities effectively that everything that you want to do that is on this trend towards an authoritarian socialism, I'm fine with that if it's all voluntary. And in fact, I can guarantee you, however it's going to turn out better if you're not paying 12 layers of bureaucracy to sit on top of it. Now, that's not an argument for it, but I'm willing to let them try, as long as they're not requiring me to participate. But I do think that we don't think about the audiences that aren't hearing a libertarian message, but you have been effective at least getting the reach, the breadth of your messaging much further than, a lot of other people, and outside of libertarians too. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think that's really a very good point, Rob. And that's really what a 60-second video is aimed at. It's aimed at people who are sitting on the cell phone, and up pops a message. You have to grab them in the first 5 to 10 seconds. You have to grab them and then get your point across. And you have to be talking about things that matter to them. That is what it really is. So one of the things I've always thought about, and it's kind of interesting, is want versus need in a free society. So, and how it was funny because the way I first thought about that is, I forgot the young guy who was, it was all the rage for such a long time, talking to college audiences, things like that.
Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro,
that's who it was. And he was being interviewed by this British guy on ABC, NBC, ABCC, one of those alphabet type things. And they were talking about the Second Amendment. And they went through the whole thing, talking. And Ben Shapiro was great until the very end. Okay. And he made a major mistake in the very end, because he was asked, why do you need an AR-15? And he said, then he started saying, well, you need to be able to shoot this. And you made some comments that were just totally wrong. And what he should have said is, it is not up to the government to tell me what I need. When the government can tell you what you need, there is no stopping their control, because the next thing they say is, what do you need that big house for? We're taking half of it away. And
you need to eat that much meat. What do you need to raise your own children?
What do you need? What do you need? What do you need to eat that food for? What do you need gas for? What do you need a car for? Well, what do you need? And so when the government is able to tell you what you need and define it, you are a complete slave. I mean, total. And so that is really a message that I think is very important for young people to understand, is that, right now you think they're only telling other people what they need. The next step is they will be telling you what you need. Yep. And then when their shoe's on that foot, it's going to pinch a whole bunch.
Yeah. No kidding. So this is awesome conversation thus far. If you're cool with it, going to bring on the panel and talk a little bit further. I wanted to close with one question, following up on the consider the audience, but a different sort of audience. And it's something that I discussed with Larry Sharp a couple of weeks ago, but also being ex-military. What do you think it is about people who have gone into the service that seems to make them so liberty-minded?
That's a good question. And I would say that it's mostly my generation of people who are in the service who are very, very staunch people who support constitutional ideas. And you know what it is? I mean, we served in a time when the country was coming out of World War II and the Korean War and thereafter, and patriotism was very, very strong. You know, for instance, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, men ran down to enlist. I mean, they didn't have to be a draft. They were overwhelmed with people for love of country. And that love of country persisted through the Korean War and even through the beginning, really, of the Vietnam War. And it was the media that really changed that. And I'm sure that you understand that. But the people who served in my general era of the military are very, very strong patriots. They love America. They appreciate everything that America has done and has given them, and they were happy to sacrifice for America. And that's where knowing history is so important, because the current generation of young people have zero idea of history that really matters. When you look around what's happening now in this country, I look right back to the 1930s in the Weimar Republic. Everything that's happening in this country now happened when Adolf Hitler came to power in the
Slightly
1930s.
different flavor, but same progression.
Right. I mean, not exactly the same steps.
There's always nuance.
Yeah, the nuance here and nuance there, but you look back there, everything that he did and Goebbels did and whether, you know, everything that happened in the 30s is happening here now. You know, I'm going to take another moment because I want to read you something that has been part of a lot of things that I've written, and it's something I've spoken about. It's in a lot of my videos, and I talk about a lot. And it is, what would you, if you wanted to be the ruler of Earth, what would you have to control? There are 9 things that you have to control.
Interesting. Okay.
Private property, energy, food and water, information in the media, education of the youth, individual privacy, healthcare, personal mobility, and the use of deadly force. You control those 9 things, you control the world, because those are things that people desperately need in order to survive, for the most part. So if you look at those things and you start looking at what's happening in our country today, okay, the government is controlling most of those things. You know, I don't know if
You're not just controlling it. People are handing over the control.
Well, I agree. I mean, and that's why you and I and the rest of us are sitting here, hopefully coming up with a way of saying, wait a minute, understand what you're doing and how wrong it is, how bad it is for your future. But you remember that Joel Skousen wrote The Naked Communist back in 1956. And he outlined the plans of the Communist Party. Curtis Bowers was a graduate student at Berkeley. He was, a friend of his back in Idaho, he was from Idaho, had said, the American, and this was after the Berlin Wall came down. They sent Curtis Bowers, a friend of his in Idaho, said, why don't you go back? The American Communist Party is having a meeting in San Francisco or Oakland or wherever. Why don't you find out what they're doing? So he tells us, it's very funny, he dressed up like he thought a communist would dress, with, you know, in the hippie era with, you know, long hair and, you know, all that, you know, tie-dye shirt. And he walks in to this meeting, and there are a bunch of people in there with business attire and briefcases. And they were discussing their plans for taking over the United States from the inside. And those plans are the same plans that Skousen wrote about in The Naked Communist. And Curtis Bowers' father wrote a book in 2011 called The Naked Truth, in which he outlined how almost every single one of those 45 plans was already successful. And that was destroy the American family, destroy American morality, and destroy the American economy. And that is what they have done. And they've done it very successfully. And that's why now we have to become the insurgents. And we have to become the insurgents by getting our message down to the people who are coming up below us.
So that is actually a perfect break. We've talked about what we need to do strategically. We've talked about what the stakes are. We've talked about the urgency of having to implement it. If you don't mind hanging around a little longer, bring on the panel. And let's start talking about how we actually operationalize it.
I think that's a great idea. Let's do it.
But first, we're going to take a quick break. All of these quote unquote sponsors are not really sponsors because they don't pay us. Dr. Dan is one of the ones advertised on it, but please support your local libertarians. We'll be right back. All right. Thank you, everyone, and welcome back. We have with us our esteemed panel. We have got Noah Zenger, who is the graphic designer for the LPNC, also works on Mike Ross's campaign with me, a tattoo artist and a generally brilliantly talented artist. We have Joshua Glosson. Josh was in California for 12 years. We're going to forgive him for that part. And the fact that he's been published in Fire, in Fee, in Carolina Journal, all over the place, one of the most prolific libertarian writers I've met, and also our strategic communications advisor. And then we have Jennifer Bias from Onslow County, right?
Brunswick.
Brunswick. See, I'm glad I asked. And in particular, Jennifer is an expert also in marketing and communications and outreach, and we have been discussing ways to more effectively market the Libertarian Party. So we had some examples for numbers 1, 3, 4, and 5 of Dr. Dan's five-point plan to redeem the party. But one thing in particular that we've been working on is number 2, the visual aspect. And so with the relaunch of the newsletter, it came out 1st October last year, but we've really gotten into it since January. Noah has been doing some comics, and I want to pull these up and just kind of get people's reactions to them. So I'm going to put these up on the screen. So this is the first one. It goes in conjunction with our time to run for office. So give me a reaction. Good, bad, honest. What do you feel about it? Dr. Dan, you first, please.
I think that really, that is exactly what Mike Ross is talking about, that we have a uniparty in power. And obviously, the libertarians are the alternative to elect someone who's running on principle rather than money. And I think that's a great, I love the cartoon. I think it's great. It's great.
Jennifer, Joshua.
It's spot on. I mean, I actually work at the beach. And so I'm seeing myself reading this book and going, this is 100% accurate. It's unfortunate. It's probably some of the problem as well, because the squeaky wheel gets the grease. But yeah, it's 100% spot on. I love it.
Well, I kind of look at it as sort of an artistic way. I realize that, you could extrapolate like several different meanings from these pictures. But my feeling is that it's suggesting that the duopoly there, the uniparty, they're just arguing over the same stuff, just who gets what amount of money and monopoly. While the libertarian comes across as often as the philosopher king. So often just like on their own, studying and just chilling, I guess, not looking for anything but peace. And that can be good and bad. And, and I guess that's kind of like why we're all here today to some degree to talk about maybe the direction of the party.
Oh, we can definitely get into that. And actually, so to follow up on that, here's the next one I want to bring up. So similar style theme and still the two people yelling at each other. When Noah and I were talking about the previous one in relations to election, we were looking for something a little lighter, get a chuckle. But this, it can be funny, but we were looking for deadly serious. So Noah, tell me what you're thinking about when you put this together.
Just really wanted to emphasize the fact that it's funny because while the Libertarian Party gets the least as far as funding and attention and ballot access, and just I feel like we are really dealt the short end of the stick with really the perceived legitimacy that is lent to us by the press and the state even. But despite all of that, it seems so often it really feels as though we are the only ones that are really serious about making a change and doing what's right for our state. It seems like the Uniparty just wants to quite literally or figuratively burn it down and make decisions that only benefit them. So ultimately, that's what I was trying to convey here.
So, Dr. Dan, I think I saw you nod your head there. You want to follow up?
What came to mind when I saw this is Nero fiddles while Rome burns.
That's good. Maybe we
I
should.
think that cigar started it.
Yeah, seriously. And then one blamed it on climate change, the other blamed it on the government.
That's right.
All right, so changing pace a little bit. This one was definitely meant to be funnier. And Jennifer, you and I were specifically discussing today that we need memes that spread messaging. So tell me how well this one is doing.
I mean, we desperately need memes. And I mean, this is great. I truly think that artists and musicians and comedians, they're going to save this party. They're going to turn this boat around. There's no other way of reaching people in a short amount of time than a meme. Go to where the people are. They're on the socials. They're doing anything they can to escape this dystopian nightmare that we're stuck in. I think they've had enough with COVID. They've had enough with working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and it's just getting worse. And what other way are they going to deal with it than to escape? And where do they escape? They escape on their phone. They escape on their laptop. And that's where they're at. Let's reach them where they're at. The memes, that's how we're going to reach them. I think it's great.
I don't think that this spreads a good message for the Libertarian Party.
Interesting.
This picture, I don't. I don't know if this is up to discussion.
No, absolutely. I want to hear. We this one's supposed to be funny.
You're right. Okay, cool. I'm just saying, as far as like, it has some negative connotations, I think, to it, that it could be at least, to the general public, they might perceive this as being, I don't know, above the law and beyond the law, like kind of gangster looking, stacking up their money.
So I agree, but I think that it's, to me at least, it's clearly sarcastic. Like people have fancied themselves this, but it's not real.
Sure. But I think that a lot of people who aren't in social media don't know the kind of money that can be made in social media. So I think sometimes there's a disconnect on like the joke itself. And I think that if you took a general consensus, I think most people would say, yeah, they would agree that, being a meme generator is probably not going to make you a lot of money, although there are a few that do it. I don't know. To me, it just seems like this picture is more, it doesn't present the best image of the libertarian.
That's fair. Very interesting. Dr. Dan, what do you think?
I happen to agree with Joshua. I mean, I understand the humor in what this meme says, but to me, it does not advance any principle of the Libertarian Party. So in that sense, I don't think it's worth putting out.
Interesting. Okay.
Can I say one thing?
Of course.
I think libertarians really get stuck in these very highbrow conversations, and that's great. I mean, we have to have the principles, we have to have the conversations, we have to have the philosophy, but all those highbrow conversations are not reaching the majority of the public who unfortunately wasn't given the best education, who are really trying to tune out of this uniparty that everyone, I mean, we're stuck in this. So it's really best that we do try to reach that audience. And I do think that reaching that audience includes humor. No, it doesn't. It doesn't really touch in on what the Libertarian Party represents, but it does get a conversation going. You're trying to grab them in the first 2 to 3 seconds because, I mean, if that, because by that point they're scrolling on, right? You're scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up.
What I think we hoped is that it at least reflected what we know some people think we represent.
Sure, but you have them.
Yeah.
You already have them. If the goal is to grow and to spread the message.
I want this outside of the party.
Right. And so why not try to grab those people? Because those people are just as frustrated, just as oppressed, just as screwed. I mean, you talked about George Carlin, and I was going to bring him up earlier. Like he said something great. He said, they want them just smart enough to push the buttons and pull the levers, and not smart enough to know just how badly they're getting screwed. I mean, if we can really illustrate that in a few seconds with a quick comic, just how badly people are getting screwed, and it makes them laugh at the same time, that's being concise. That's getting a message across. That's reaching people. No, it doesn't get into the fundamentals of the libertarian philosophy. No, it doesn't. That comes later. You have to grab their attention first.
So it is something I'll think about, because the discussion is it more off-putting than bringing people in? But I will say that when Noah and I were discussing this one, no, I think you were the one that compared it to the Simpsons episode when all of Springfield joins a cult, but Homer won't join despite all of their attempts. And then they find him singing the Batman song and they're like, no, leader. And then he joins the cult. Which is unfortunately a terrifyingly accurate representation of too much of America. But so this is perfect for the last one. So this one is meant to be serious, but a note to libertarians. So let me jump back to you, Joshua. We're talking about the direction of the party. Is this reflective of where we sometimes miss in direction?
Well, let me take a look at it really quick. Let's see.
The top libertarians in a room together, they're all yelling at each other. And then the second half is libertarians when someone else enters the room. And the first frame is this new person is saying the NSA is here to keep us safe. And now all the people that were yelling at each other are now yelling at the new person.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, I think this is great. I think that this is a great representation of libertarians and free speech, and Vermin Supreme there represented. Great guy. I enjoyed meeting him. I met him a couple of years ago, yeah, I think it's humorous. He's sarcastic, but if truth be told, I'm friends with a lot of anarchists, but I can't like say that I would like support them being representative of the Libertarian Party. Just because when you are running in politics, you're running for positions of power, so to speak. You're running to, have a competition with those who are wanting to actually control you. So there are implicitly saying you agree with power to some degree. You know what I mean? At least at some point, you agree with it. So although he's hilarious, and I love this picture, and I think he's fantastic at what he does, I don't think that this actually represents the Libertarian Party's movement if we're to move forward, politically speaking.
I want to kick this back over to Dr. Dan. So you just said something that is like a fascinating core debate in the Libertarian Party. So I'm not an anarchist. I know a ton of anarchists. I like anarchists in the party because I think I believe it was Spike Cohen or maybe Larry Sharp said they need to be our North Star. We always have to be moving towards less government, even if we'll never get there, even if it's impractical to get there. But let me ask you this, Dr. Dan, where should we be in a platform basis? So no discussion of our principles, but they can manifest in different platform positions in a few areas.
Well, we all know that there's that continuum from total government to absolutely no government. And so libertarians have to find a happy home somewhere on that continuum. And if you look at basic constitutional principles, that's where we need to find our home. The Constitution tells us where libertarians should be. They should be in a place where the government obeys the individual rights of individuals based upon what the Bill of Rights says. I'm a textualist when it comes to the Constitution. I believe the words have exact meaning. If you have a word and you don't know what it means, get a dictionary from 1790 and you'll understand what those words mean. So the Constitution to me is a contract. So if we need to find our home, we just look at that contract and say, I want to be on that continuum where this contract is followed. That's where we have to be.
So,
because it really provides for everything in the interpersonal relationship point of view and the relationship between people and government.
so my only concern with that approach is that if the words on the Constitution, so not the spirit of the Constitution, and I've heard you talk about this, how natural law, natural rights are what drive the words that come under the Constitution. But if we allowed simply the existence of the words to manifest into change, then you get, for example, a 13th Amendment that still allows for slavery. And Gavin Newsom wants to push for a 26th Amendment that restricts gun rights pretty substantially. So to me, we either have these rights or you get, what was it, the 14th, introducing income tax, right? Is it 14th or 16th?
16th Amendment.
Yeah, I knew it was one of the two, sorry. Long day. I had a pipe burst as a whole thing. It's one of the only two amendments I know. No, but all of a sudden, these natural rights get chipped away if we are willing to put sort of the primacy of our faith into the Constitution, where that should, I think, be representative of our rights, but not all-encompassing, declarative or limiting of our rights, I suppose is a better way to.
The only problem is when you have, if you look at the Constitution as a contract and say, well, let's say you have a contract with the bank on a car loan. Why don't you try going to the bank and saying, hey, I don't like this contract anymore. I'm going to pay you half what the contract says. How far are you going to get? You're not going to get very far. And if you can't abide by a contract that was agreed upon, a contract which, by the way, has methods for changing it as part of it. You want to change the contract? Here's how you change it. Go ahead and change it. But when you get to the point where you allow judges to change the contract, senators to change the contract, worst of all, bureaucrats to change the contract.
Unaccountable.
They're unaccountable. And so that's why you have to use something really concrete as the basis for your for government. If you don't, then it's just all over the place, because then the government can change one thing. And if you don't say, wait, you can't change that, then they go and they change the next thing. And that's how we got where we are today. There's no one said, no, I will not comply with that crap. It's not constitutional. No, you can't change that. It's written that I have the right to X, Y, Z or whatever. And you have to, if you're not willing to stand up, then gradually it gets chipped away like it has.
Which is a perfect segue. Let's take a quick minute, look at the last video you have ready here, losing your rights piece by piece.
This is Dr. Dan. You know, it's easy for big government to steal our freedom. It happens slowly, piece by piece. In Nazi Germany, 8 million Jews, gypsies, and other undesirables were sent to the concentration camps to be exterminated. But that's not how it all began. The first edict was that Jews could not sit on benches in public parks. Jewish leaders said, it's only a bench. We can still sit on the grass. That's the wrong answer. They all should have sat down on the park bench immediately and said, wait a minute, we will not comply with your unlawful and immoral laws, rules, and regulations that steal our rights. That's what Rosa Parks did when she refused to sit in the back of the bus. Ultimately, the human spirit craves freedom. Resist tyranny. Learn the truth. Break away from the herd. Think for yourself.
So nothing but truth there. And Jennifer, I want to go to you because of everyone here, you live in perhaps the most ideologically captured segment of North Carolina. And I think your little pocket is okay, but more broadly, a lot of presumption in terms of the government's ability and willingness to help and help successfully. How do you, when you see that getting taken away at a local level, piece by piece, how do you push back?
Transparency, exposure, and putting it in a way that makes it marketable. And being marketable is through humor. Life is hard as it is, like people are having the hardest time right now. They're working more than ever. Their money is worth less than ever, and they feel kind of screwed. And so I go back to escapism. People are escaping on their cell phones. Why not reach people where they're at and expose these people, make fun of them? I mean, because somebody needs to expose it. Like the media has been bought and sold a long time ago. These city managers are all into real estate.
If I can jump in there real fast, if you want your mind blown, go look at the campaign donors just around North Carolina, the city, the county, and at the state levels. It's all developers, and it is a lot of money.
Yeah, and there's lots more money to be made, car washes and Dollar Generals and apartment buildings. And that's what you're seeing. And we're finding this out after the fact. Okay, so people are a little late to the game. All right, so they've already been screwed. So why not put yourself in a position where you're exposing them, you're exposing their intentions, but you're putting it in a way that's not so serious. Libertarians are so serious. We can't be serious all the time. We can't. It is a serious subject. I take liberty very seriously, but it's heavy. You can't have highbrow conversations, 18 hours of the day. You can, but you'll burn yourself out.
So that's actually really interesting, because not only is it heavy, but the highbrow conversations that are required to break it down are sort of the antithesis of what the uniparty and the media narrative have created. It really is all just like catchphrases and sound bites and blah, blah. And
that's the world we're living in. We live in a TikTok nation.
And the machine is really good at it. And there's a lot of money behind it. And so Joshua, you've made it your personal mission, not to directly end the ABC in North Carolina, but to create real competition to the ABC, which I am with you, would result in the end of the ABC immediately. But how do you push back against something that well-funded and that accepted, that just institutionalized because that's what we've been told?
Yeah, everyone here knows what the ABC is. So the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission, sometimes referred to as ABCC, in North Carolina, controls liquor in the state of North Carolina. It controls its production, its warehousing, its distributions, and its sales. It's really difficult because there's this sort of a pseudo idea of decentralization. It's pseudo decentralization type of control mechanism that they have here in North Carolina. And that's where they say that each county has its laws, and that's approved by the head of the state. And so they're saying that the only way to fight it, the ABC system, is you have to go by county. And I completely disagree. I think that we have a way that we can go through influencing and inspiring different people who are in the state. For instance, the unaffiliated voters right now are number one. This is a
2.8 million.
state. Exactly. So this is a purple state. So you have to ask yourself a few questions. Why?
Josh, it's a gold state. They just haven't realized it yet.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
No, exactly. Thank you for bringing that up, Rob. So I do believe in this idea that in a purple state there is a golden lining somewhere found, and one of the things that means is just that there's got to be a reason that so many people are saying, hey, I'm not a Republican anymore. Hey, I'm not a Democrat anymore. In fact, one article just last year at the Carolina Journal came out, and it said that over 15,000 Democrats changed over to unaffiliated. Now, I don't know if that's a remnant of the older generations who were registered as Democrat, but tend to think sort of more on the Republican type of. Right. I'm not sure if it was something like that, or if maybe there is a significant opportunity right now to find maybe there's agreement on something, particularly like the ABC system being terrible. And talk to any layperson in the street, and they'll tell you they want to end it. But I think that this purple is an indicator, for libertarians to come together and to work on something that motivates all of them. So there's got to be something that there is, and that I believe is the ABC system. Just our fight against that.
When there would undoubtedly be massive for morale, volunteer numbers, membership numbers, but the fact remains that the Uniparty, especially in North Carolina, is losing hold on paper. But the voting trends aren't changing nearly as much as we'd like to see. So, Dr. Eden, let me ask you, what are the obstacles? Like, what are the specific things that we are not breaking down to get people to take that extra step?
Well, when you say to someone, ask someone to vote for a libertarian candidate, you know that the very first thing out of their mouths is, I'm going to be wasting a vote. That's what that is it. I mean, that is the number one answer you get. You say, well, I'm going to vote for the Libertarian. I say, well, what are you going to waste your vote? He's not going to win anyway. So-and-so will win instead because you didn't vote for him. There are all these unaffiliated voters. We should be able to reach out to them and get our message to them. That might be one of the ways that we can try to gain people to actually accept a vote for a libertarian as being a useful vote, if you think that voting is going to actually change it.
It brings to mind for me, if you don't mind.
Of course.
It reminds me of being in a car with two of your friends, and you're not necessarily the driver. Let's say that you're sitting in the back seat, and the front driver says, "You know what? Let's go get ice cream." And the two of you, the passenger and you in the back, you're like, "Yeah, man, that sounds great. Let's do it. Let's go get some maybe Ben and Jerry's or whatever, your favorite local ice creamery." And the guy in the front, the driver says, "You know what? We got to get all one flavor though, because the store that's the only way they serve it." And so you say, okay, well, fine, I believe that. So he says, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to eat vanilla. And so then the passenger's like, no, I want chocolate. I want chocolate. And that's what I always eat. So chocolate. Now the vanilla and chocolate, they're going back and forth. And you're in the back, and you know what? You're a little bit more adventurous today. Maybe you're in the mood for cookie dough. So you're there and you're saying, guys, you are arguing over nothing right now. Like, we need to come together and bring cookie dough to the table. Chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream. We can all kind of agree on this. If you don't like the cookie dough, spit it out. You got vanilla. And if all you like is chocolate, maybe try the cookie dough. You'll like it. So, and there's chocolate chips in there too. So I'm saying is, you're all going to fight over and over and over again. And now the guy who's driving right now, he has all the power. He's controlling the seat, and you're like, you don't know what to do. And then, so the two in the front obviously have more power than you in the back. That's usually the rule of thumb in social hierarchies, I would say.
It's a good analogy. I will say this: if I'm driving, it's instantly becoming a dictatorship, and we're switching to the bar because I don't want to hear your ice cream talk anymore. Running with that analogy. So
I was about to finish on it.
I'm sorry.
The last part of that is, the only way that you're really going to win is by learning the art of persuasion. And so, and I think that goes to what Jennifer's saying. And I think that's also what Dr. Dan has been saying. And Noah's art, I think, expresses that as well. And Rob, everything that you do, I think, expresses that. We each find our way of
I think people just feel bad for me. But.
No. You're awesome, man. So, Jennifer's saying, she's saying, use humor. And I think Dr. Dan is also saying, historicity. And then Noah's saying, use art. And, and you're using this podcast and everything, here to influence people. We're all agreeing, use the art of persuasion in order to get our chocolate chip cookie dough, because you know what? We can't get beat up the driver, because then we're all screwed. Or, you know what I mean? We're going to wreck. So that's my point.
Well, no, I love the analogy. And actually, so Noah, certainly it's use art, but Noah and I share a similarity in that we both came up in the arts, and it's not as prevalent in the Libertarian Party as you might have expected. Like, it really isn't. But Noah, you work to run with the ice cream analogy, a lot of people that require, some shade of red ice cream. And I don't mean Republican red. It's with little yellow dots in it, right? Yeah, you get along with those people great. And I sat there, they respect you. They're starting to listen to you. How do you get our message across to people who are so diametrically opposed to it to start?
I think the biggest thing is, I've heard some other people phrase it this way. When you talk to a liberal, you have to teach them or show them why you are a better liberal than they are. And it's the same thing with the right. And some people will call it attacking the left from the left or attacking the right from the right, which you can do, and it's fun. But I think there's ways to show and illustrate that our messaging and our principles actually achieve a lot of the goals that they truly want. It's like you were saying earlier, that everyone's libertarian, they just haven't realized it yet. And so it's like, whenever I sit down with a liberal, I typically am not like, let's talk about guns and deregulating guns, unless they want to bring up racist laws. Sometimes I'll talk to them and be like, well, did you know that a lot of gun control was actually Jim Crow laws, and we'll have that discussion. But that's only if they breach it. I mean, typically I will talk to them about war. I'll talk to them about the crony capitalism that we have and the ways that the free market can offer solutions to these things that they're always complaining about. So I usually just let them kind of lead the conversation so I can get to what they're interested in. And that always, most of the time, it leads to really great conversations, and it kind of helps me feel out like what their priorities are and what issues their heart really relies on, or really what they're very passionate about. That way I can have that discussion with them.
And so perfect. Identify the audience and then spread the message in a way that resonates with the audience. So Jennifer, you and I were talking earlier, because there's one particular audience who is actually reasonably well represented in the party on paper, but not in person, and it's women. And it's crazy to me that but it's crazy. Like, the principles of libertarianism would have solved a lot of the historical issues that many women would cite today for which they're looking for redress. You would be able to either be a traditional family woman or go out and try your hand in the market and see where it goes. But I think one of the big problems is if someone is told her entire life, oh, cis white men are going to go mansplain to you. And then we're like, hey, you should check out the libertarian movement. You're mansplaining. And I'm exaggerating for effect, but that error is there. How do we
You're
get
not exaggerating. You're not. I'm sorry, you're not.
I'm trying to be
And any
nice.
liberty chick, that's Kim and I's term. We coined that, by the way, liberty chicks. Any liberty chick's gonna tell you that. And it's a thing. So I think the solution to that's pretty simple. Involve women, like involve everyone.
To be
And
fair, have
we
you
do.
met
We're open
libertarians?
to everyone,
Talking
but
to women can be.
is the message solely like if you pull up, I talked with you this earlier about the Facebook stats, 85% male. And I'm sure you're seeing the same thing on your end.
It's crazy to me though, if you can expand on this, if you look at the voter registration numbers, I think it's actually 51% women.
Yeah. So we have to look at that. We have to look at not just females, but everybody. We have to look at what everybody's doing. So yeah, I would say just including everyone and making sure everybody feels involved. I think it's important to gather with people. I think it's important to have events. It can't just all be books and philosophical conversations. That is so important, but it's not how you grab people. And if our whole goal is to grow this movement and to make them realize it's a gold state, right? To your point, we have to grab them. And the only way to grab them is through messaging, period. So we have to look at this from a marketing perspective. We have to look at the message itself. We have to look at what are we putting out there that's attracting men. Okay, great. We've got that solved. Check. What do we do to involve everybody else?
So this has been a fantastic discussion. I want to be conscious of time. But on that note, Dr. Dan, I want to end with you. So we got the 5 things sort of our 5-point plan that we have to implement to make this work. We have talked about what the stakes are, and we have talked about how important it is to start doing something. And now we've looked at the areas where we can begin to implement or have begin to try to move forward. But you're now in charge of strategy for the Libertarian Party for 1 hour. And the question to you is, what do we do first?
I think I like the idea of memes. I think they're a very, very quick way of getting a point across. They come on to a cell phone, which everyone is using. And I think, though, the memes need to be visually acceptable, and they need to portray some kind of message that would draw you to the Libertarian Party. So they have to deal with the principles of the Libertarian Party, and they also have to deal with what do you have to lose by not being the part of our party?
Yeah, I agree.
That's really what you have to say. In other words, it's like that shirt with the pieces of the snake and it says unite or die. It's really come down to that.
Or
what you've already lost.
Yeah, that's
good.
Like the Bill of Rights has been trampled on. And we keep talking about the Bill of Rights.
Trampled on means
don't even think most 20 to 30-year-olds know that.
Well, they don't know it because they've been shielded. That hasn't affected them. And the important thing is for younger people to understand that they will be affected by all of these things. Maybe not tomorrow, but next month they might, or next year they might. So it has to be proven and shown to them that they have skin in this game. And if they don't wake up and realize that, they're going to be out of luck. They're going to lose the things that they really want. It's not just what they take from us. It's what they will take from you.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it. Noah, apparently we need more memes, and you're not going to believe it, but I saw a comic earlier that said you could make a bunch of money making memes. So I think you should quit your job and just start doing the hobby. Hey, Noah, Joshua, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining in the panel. Dr. Dan, thank you times a million. This is an awesome conversation. Like some real takeaways here, some stuff we can work on. Quick plug, Dr. Dan, Freedom Forum Radio, his website and his radio website will be in the comments. Noah, Jennifer, or Joshua, do you want to plug anything?
Hey, joshuadglosson.com. Hopefully that'll be in there too.
I'll put it in the description. I don't know if I should let you plug anything. I've been asking Noah for a graphic so that I can run his tattoo business in the newsletter for like 2 months too. And he's so selfish. All he does is all the other stuff for the party. No time to send me. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested in seeing more comics, I have an Instagram specifically for those. So you can follow me on Instagram at Liberty-tunes. And then if you're interested in possibly getting a tattoo, hit me up. I'm at Zinger Tattoo. I'm currently in Kernersville, but I will be moving to Wilmington very soon. So
If you don't like the painted tattoos, don't go to Noah. He laughs as you scream. I know this from experience.
it's true.
You screamed.
No. Jennifer, anything you would like to end with?
I just want to say, if this conversation has said anything, I think it's a call to all the creatives. I think the creatives get downplayed, because we're a party of philosophers, right? But I do truly believe that art is going to save the day. I do believe that music will save the day. Comedy is going to save the day.
It's our soul. It brings our
So
soul back.
this is a call out to anyone who's a creative. If you're in the Libertarian Party and you're sitting on your butt watching this, get off your rear end and do something. Do anything.
100%. And do you know what? Creative can be so many things. Dr. Dan told us at the beginning, I was running for this council. I just started Freedom Forum Radio, and that was 11 years ago. And here we are. So yes, whatever you have to offer, we need it. The stakes are too high. Thank you all so very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Look forward to talking to you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Rob.
very much.
Thanks, Rob.
Hi, everybody. Travis Groo here in Dub, and this is the sports section of the Liberty Inc. And we are here to talk about the Wake Forest LSU game going on right now. Go Wake Forest, Demon Deacons. The winner of this game will actually go to the NCAA World Series versus Florida Gators. So I'm cheering for Wake Forest. What about you, Dub? What do you got?
You know what? I will root for them because, it would be the first College World Series for any school in North Carolina if they make it, correct?
That is correct. And right now the score is 0-0, and it's in the bottom of the 8th. So this could be a huge opportunity for Wake Forest if they win this game, and they will be in the World Series, which is the best of 3 games. I believe that college does it a little bit different than Major League Baseball. So it would be the best of 3 for the World Series. So it's an intense game going on right now, and I hope Wake Forest beats LSU so that we could put North Carolina on the map here.
Indeed, I agree. So let's go Demon Deacons. I wouldn't say that too often, though, but in this case, I would.
Exactly. You don't say that very often. You don't see many people around here with Demon Deacon stickers on their car, but you might after this, because this is
that's funny. That's true, especially if they're baseball people.
Right. So anything else? What other sports do we need to talk about right now?
It is now the summer of soccer.
Indeed, it is.
Yeah, and the USA last week won the Nations League over Canada 2-0. But before that, they thrashed Mexico 3-0 in a game that ended 9-9 because of chicanery by the Mexican team, who ends up playing dirty when things aren't going their way, which is why it is the greatest rivalry in soccer currently. So
I missed that game, but tell us how it went. Who won?
Yeah, it all started when our new person that we signed away from England because he wasn't getting any playing time, Balogun, was hacked down on purpose after he stole the ball from a Mexican player, and the Mexican player got an immediate red, and then McKinney, for mixing it up with the Mexican bench, also got a red card. And then later on in the second half, Serginho Dest didn't like the way he was being handled, and the player in that instance was actually a person who had come off the bench, started it, and they both got red cards, one each for each team. So that's why the match ended 9-on-9. It probably could have ended 9-on-8 or 9-on-7 due to some of the things, because Weston McKennie had his jersey torn and they gave that player absolutely nothing, not even a yellow card. So as I told people, maybe some of these CONCACAF matches with the USA and Mexico don't need to be officiated by CONCACAF officials. We need to start thinking about getting UEFA officials who know racism. They know rivalry for 100 years longer than CONCACAF has. So we need European officials officiating USA Mexico from now on. I don't care if it's a friendly. I don't care if it's a Gold Cup. I don't even care if it's in a World Cup where they get matched up in the bracket. It just needs to be a European official in that game, because, you know, the Mexican fans started chanting their homophobic chant as well near the end of the game. And the, I believe he was the Guatemalan referee, stopped the game to just call it 5 minutes before it was over, because it was the second time it happened. And you could see him just blow a sigh of relief at the end of the match, like, I'm glad this thing is over. So, but also you have the Women's World Cup coming up. We had some selections. We have a backup goalkeeper from the NC Courage, but she's the starting keeper of Ashley, and she's now the backup to Nair. And hopefully, you know, they can get another star for their crest to make 5. And, you know, we had another former NC Courage, Lynn Williams, make it. I was happy to see she made it. She got snubbed last cycle, I believe, when she was still on the Courage. And I'm glad she rightfully won a spot, because she's one of the best American players, in my opinion.
Now, I have yet to make it to a NC Courage game. Have you ever been to one?
I have not, but I have been a supporter of the NC Courage ever since they moved from Western New York.
Yeah.
So they're just like the majority of transplants to North Carolina. They came from Western New York to move to this state. Right. So it's only apropos that they play in Cary.
Right.
But,
I want to go.
I haven't been to one of their games, or NCFC, which used to be called the Railhawks.
Yeah.
They're probably my team in USL. You know, them, but I'll also root for the Charlotte Independents. But my MLS team is Charlotte FC. I'm a member of the Mint City Collective. I'm a Day Zero member, meaning I was a member before the team was officially announced. My membership card is number 11.
Very nice.
So that tells you how original of a fan I am. So
yeah, you're getting me all excited for World Cup 2026.
Yes. Let's go, ladies. Let's get number 5.
Exactly. What's the update on the Panthers? What's going on there? And then we'll talk about the Hornets a little bit. There's some development there with the draft.
The Panthers have begun on YouTube putting out their series called The Blueprint. And the episode 1, if you haven't seen it, is a great episode. It talks all about the circle of life, Frank Reich coming back, Dom Capers coming back, the squad that they assembled in the coaching staff, and how we seem to have a competent coaching staff this year as opposed to the last 3. No disrespect to Steve Wilkes, by the way, but we're talking about that certain coach that went to Nebraska. So, and I will not mention his name.
They kicked him right out of this state, didn't they?
Yeah,
they won't let him come back.
No,
he is permanently kicked out of North Carolina.
No, if I would be shocked if any school, I don't care if it's Carolina State, Duke, Wake, App State, East Carolina, do not invite Nebraska as a non-conference opponent ever while that man is coaching them.
And we are talking about Matt Rule, by the way.
Yes, that is the man I'm
For
talking
the
about.
Matt Rule regime. It did not go so well.
No, it did not.
We're permanently banning him from North Carolina.
Yeah, he is persona non grata. You know,
Yeah, he can no longer come here. He can't even live
Yeah.
here. Like,
yeah,
we don't even want his tax money here.
yeah, no.
Yeah, Matt Rule, you're not welcome here. So if you're watching, I know he probably is watching this right now. So
Yeah, now I just got an interesting update. You're probably watching it live, like the live baseball, but I have it on the game cast.
okay.
And I see now it is the top of the ninth.
ESPN app now.
Okay.
Top of the ninth, 0-0.
Yeah. So and I realize Wake Forest is the road team, so they're batting first each inning. So they would need to score to put the pressure on the Tigers to respond back in the bottom half of the inning. So
Right. Let's go, Demon Deacons. Okay, we'll keep you updated on this game as we go along. But how about the Hornets? I know you were keeping up with the draft earlier, and we drafted somebody that you weren't expecting. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, it's not that I wasn't expecting it. I would have preferred they got Scoot Henderson, but they got Brandon Miller instead.
All right.
And I'm welcoming him to the team. He is a small forward. The Hornets needed a small forward. He does shoot well. And he did great for Alabama this year, made Alabama a prominent program. And nobody would have ever thought of Alabama as a basketball school, but Brandon Miller did it. And
Right.
I think he should be serviceable for the Hornets. But now they have another pick coming up at number 27 here in the first round.
Now, what's this news about Michael Jordan selling the team?
Yeah, Michael Jordan is selling the team. He's not exactly fully selling the team, but what he's doing is he is divesting his majority share of the team.
Well, he'll still have a vested interest in their winnings.
Well, yeah, he will become a minority owner again. But
Gotcha.
yeah.
Do we know what percentage he will be moving to as far as his ownership?
Well, all I know is he bought the remaining shares to become the majority owner from Bob Johnson for $250 million. And he sold the majority shares for $3 billion.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he definitely took the franchise a lot farther under his ownership.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it is a group, and this is according to ESPN, a group led by Gabe Plotkin and Rich Schnall. And what these people are, Schnall is the co-president of private equity firm Clayton, Dublier and Rice in New York. And he was part of a group that bought part of the Hawks, but he will have to sell that share back to them in order to buy his share of the Hornets in the Hornets selling group.
Okay.
So, and once that's completed and approved by 2/3 of the Board of Governors meeting, it will be official. But tonight's pick was made by Michael Jordan's control of the Hornets.
Thanks for the update on that. Still 0-0. What else do we need to cover on this show tonight?
Well, going back to the summer of soccer, do you realize Bank of America Stadium is going to host Gold Cup matches?
Nice, really?
Yeah, and one of them will involve the United States versus Trinidad and Tobago.
Wow. Do you know when this is?
It will be sometime in July. I can look that up for you. I didn't have it exactly called
Let's
up,
cruise
but
on down there. We'll do a show live from the game.
oh, that would be interesting to do, but I would have to see how it does out. Well, it's actually happening July 2nd at 7 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Is that also going to be a World Cup stadium? they gonna use-
Charlotte was not selected as a World Cup stadium, unfortunately. And that
Okay.
I was really disappointed in that, but I think the stadia were determined before 2019 when the stadium was converted to hold soccer as well as football.
Right.
So that was disappointing because with the numbers that
disappointing.
Charlotte has seen in MLS, they are one of the few teams that are averaging in the upper 20,000s, near 30,000 fans a game.
Yeah.
And they have proven that soccer is a draw in Charlotte and would draw well. In fact, Mexico has held matches at Bank of America Stadium and got bleeding sellouts or near sellouts. Because there is
Was
a high
Atlanta- is
percentage
Atlanta
of
one of the-
Hispanics that live in the Charlotte area.
Is Atlanta one of the stadiums?
Yes, Atlanta
Atlanta
is, but remember Atlanta was already in MLS, and
Yeah.
so they already had the presence. Atlanta, Miami, Dallas, the Rose Bowl. But remember, it is a tri-host in 2026 because you got La Azteca, and I believe I only know that one. I'm not sure of the second stadium in Mexico. I know
There one in Canada.
Yeah, there are 3 in Canada: Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal.
Okay.
And Toronto is at, I believe, BMO Field, which is the outdoor stadium, not the Rogers Center, what I still call the Sky Dome. Montreal is Olympic Stadium, and Vancouver is BC Place. I think that's called something else now, but I still call it BC Place. That's their large domed stadium, which has an interesting retractable roof. It almost is like a curtain that scrunches up if they want to open the roof, which is really neat.
Well, if it's played in the winter, I don't think they're going to want to do that.
Well, no, the 2026 World Cup will be back to its normal summer schedule.
Okay.
Because it won't be in a sweltering desert of 125 degrees.
It won't be in Qatar.
No, it won't.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for the update on that. I'm still waiting for Wake Forest to score.
Oh,
man.
yes.
It's not happening.
It
on
truly
edge.
is a pitcher's duel, or either the hitters are very nervous getting up to the plate.
Well, it's bottom of the 9th right now, and there's 1 out. This could go into extra innings, actually, right now.
Yeah, but also there's also that rare chance that it, goes to, a walk-off. So
yeah,
that would be devastating.
Yeah,
But,
this would be good. This would be really good for North Carolina right now if Wake Forest could pull this off.
Yeah, but from what I'm seeing, the pitcher's thrown 3 straight balls, but I don't know how live it is with what you're seeing on the app.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, there's a strike. Okay. Well, that's all I have. We can always update the winning team of this series next week
Yes, absolutely.
and report
Because
on.
we'll end up getting a lot of, unwanted dead air, and that's not what we want here.
Can we just sit here
Because
for like
we want
20 minutes?
action, and I tell you, I'm curious to see who the Hornets will pick also at 27, and they've got 3 second-round picks. So I don't know if they're going to package those and players and do more trades, but it's
Yeah,
just a really unusual draft this year, I think, because after the top 2 or 3, and then they had the twins, Amen and Amon. And after that, I don't know who else is going to be drafted. But as you know, or as the commissioner finally said, Jamal Murray was a 7th pick and Nikola Jokic was a 2nd round 41st pick. And they won the NBA championship. So it's not always the top 5 or the lottery players that,
yeah, you got
make
that
a
right.
team. You got to know how to draft well. So that's all I have.
That's all I have too. And we'll just end it here. We appreciate you watching the sports broadcast for the Liberty Inc. And we think it's one of the greatest sports shows of all time. And we appreciate you following along and watching. And we hope you find it entertaining. And we will see you next week. Thank you for watching.
Yes, thank you all for watching.